Yeah, like if you watch Korean StarCraft, like high-level StarCraft
Those
play,
are Koreans. They aren't people.
So even the Caucasian
Wow,
players are skinny as hell, man.
Holy
Koreans,
shit!
they're not people. Did you say that?
He doesn't in no way represents the TCX.
Like the
Hey guys, it's a philosopher, and welcome to the Console Xplosion podcast, where we talk about all the nerdy things that matter to us, and we just have a conversation about it. And as always, I'm joined by a host of YouTubers and other fantastic people. But today, we're going to talk about something pretty cool. We have someone who knows a little bit, probably a lot more than I do about it. But Nintendo Power, if you haven't heard, it's been a magazine that's been going on for a long time, and it's now been archived and put online. And Alex, could you tell me a little bit more about that?
Okay, so probably the bit what makes it more notable is it's put online in what is a hopefully legal fashion. In the past, sites like RetroMags have put Nintendo Power and other old video game magazines up on the internet to be archived as a historical record for purposes of preserving the history of this art form. And now that kind of operated in a gray area where basically but for the grace of the publishers did those continue to exist. For example, they used to have a big archive of Game Informer, but then Game Informer said, hey, we have our own big archive of our own that we have. Could you take yours down? On the other hand, EGM, they let that continue to exist because they didn't have a big archive in their office, and having the magazines up on RetroMag serves as a good way for them to preserve their history at limited cost to themselves. For example, archive.org, which is the Internet Archive where you can find back archives of old websites, and has also in the past few years been getting into putting up magazines. They started off with Starlog, which is a classic science fiction magazine in terms of covering science fiction in terms of film and television as a medium. They also had Omni for a bit. Omni then took their archive off the site and put on their own thing. They had a few other stuff. And recently they put archive.org put up a fairly complete up to June 2001 archive of Nintendo Power magazine. I'm kind of hesitant on the legality thing here because there have been some magazines that have been put up there where they feel like they've been in more of a gray area, not totally legal in the first place. A while back, they put up on there a full archive of Dragon magazine. This was the house magazine for TSR, the company that published Dungeons & Dragons, and it covered all of TSR's role-playing games, Dungeons & Dragons, and all of its campaign settings, some of their other games like Marvel Superheroes, Gamma World, that sort of stuff. But it was taken down because they covered the issues entirely, and TSR had actually gotten in trouble. TSR and Wizards of the Coast has gotten in trouble in the past for putting out a CD called the Dragon Magazine Archive, where they republished the issues in their entirety, including ads and comic strips that ran in the magazines, which they did not have the reprint rights for. And this also led to the Dragon Magazine issues being pulled off from archive as well. We'll see if this stays up because there's been Nintendo Power ran, in addition to having their excellently laid out strategy guides with some occasionally poor font color choices, their excellently done covers and really good internal art, also ran comic strips. In addition to Howard and Nestor, which the magazine Nintendo owned itself, they also ran a manga adaptation of Legend of Zelda: Link to the Past, done by Shotaro Ishinomori, who is a classic artist of manga. He did, among other things, Cyborg 009, and he is the guy who created Kamen Rider. And that ran in Nintendo Power, and recently has been gotten a print release by Viz. And I think Viz also has the digital release of that as well, so I don't know where the reprint rights fall in on that. I pay attention to this because I listen to podcasts hosted by science fiction writers, so this stuff comes up on the business side of things.
Right. And so, not to cut you off, but it's actually in my opinion, it's kind of a big deal.
Oh, it is absolutely a big deal.
One, I think it is cool that all the episodes or all the issues of Nintendo Power were uploaded online, but it seems like it might not have been at the consent of Nintendo or the people who published Nintendo Power. Is that what you're basically saying?
We haven't got confirmation from Nintendo on this. Before, sites like RetroMag had a fairly complete-ish run. They usually kept a cutoff date of like 10 years old, or like 15 or 20 years old, or whatever. Just so they're not competing with the magazine itself for recent back issues. So the stuff that's up there is stuff that's harder to come by anyway. More historical, more retro. Hence, retro mags. With retro mags, this was lying in a gray area. Archive.org, hopefully, with the stuff they've done in the past with Starlog, with Omni, it's been done with the people, by working with the people who run the magazines. So hopefully, we haven't gotten confirmation of this from Nintendo, but knock on wood, this is a situation where this is, as opposed to before, a completely legit uploading. All the rights are okay. This is something that will last for a while, and thus we'll have a way for future generations of game players, game fans, to have access to these old magazines and access to this portion of game history that was in a much more tenuous situation otherwise. Hopefully the EGM archive is in the same state, where it's a situation where it's with the consent of the magazine, the publishers are okay with this, and this archive of game history, in terms of game journalism, in terms of going through and reading when EGM, for example, got blacklisted by Capcom for giving a lower score to Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo than the new challengers, because it was basically like the same old game with a couple new fighters added, for example. And also, for that matter, preserving the advertising history, because EGM ran ads, and this preserves things like, for example, the classic Daikatana ad, and various other pieces, like the Sega does with Nintendo print ad campaign, and preserving all this in a fashion where future generations who want to learn about the history of games and want to learn how games were perceived at the time where they came out can do that. Because, as with all art forms, there are pieces of art, film, books, and video games which may have been panned at the time, but are revolutionary in some form or another, or have achieved new life and new appeal after the fact. And it's important to know this. It's good to know that, for example, Psycho got panned when it first came out, but now is regarded as a classic, or other of Hitchcock's films. And on the game standpoint, it'd be great to, for example, to see, okay, maybe SimCity for the Super Nintendo got panned when it first came out back in the day, but it's regarded as, but we regard it now as one of the best PC to console ports in gaming history.
Yeah, and I want to add on to something here. I want to share my opinion, and I want everybody else to share their thoughts as well. And I do believe it is an art form, but I also think that this is a piece of gamer history. This is kind of our roots as a gaming community, and so we have a whole new generation that didn't quite have access to a lot of these older versions of the magazines now have access to them, hopefully for a long time. I hope they don't take it down. I don't see Nintendo Power really making much, or Nintendo making a lot of money from these older magazines anyways, because it's a discontinued magazine, and they aren't making any more issues of it. I think they stopped, a year or two ago, and
2012.
2012. Wow, it's been a while. Holy crap. So, yeah, it's a piece of history. I can't think of the word right now. I want to say almanac, possibly something along those lines, where you can just go back and look at all the games that are coming out, and like the style of marketing, the style of art that they chose for it, all these things that they did, and how it evolved from what it was back then. Like Nintendo alone, but just gaming in general. But you can see Nintendo, how like their first image is like this claymation-looking version of Mario with King K. Rool in the background, sort of thing, and to growing into this bigger thing that's totally different. So I think that's cool. I'd like to know what you guys think about that as well.
Minor correction, that's King Wart from Mario 2 in the background.
Oh, wait, what?
Oh, you sure about that? I thought he came from Doki Doki Panic.
Well, still, yeah, he did come from Doki Doki Panic, but the cover is from Mario Brothers 2, the U.S. release of Mario 2.
Thank you.
I gotta say though, I just downloaded the first issue, right? The PDF version, it's actually garbage. It's not really well, from what I can see. Though, if you download the comic work RAR, that one is have the best quality of
Oh,
the things.
absolutely, yes. The CBZ version, CBR and the CBZ versions um, are generally the best because you're working with a straight up image, direct image from the magazine.
Yeah, but
Whereas
it
the,
seems
the
like I don't know
PDF,
if you downloaded the PDF, but it seems like it was some sort of processing done to keep it down, but it looks like garbage.
yeah, I believe they did some additional compression on it for converting it to the PDF. Is the text selectable or searchable on it at all?
Let me. I just I just freaking deleted it because it was not cool. But let me see. Yeah,
Okay.
because you know, I was
That
looking at it and it's just not.
that's the one reason I'd see going for the PDF over any of the other versions. Like they have an EPUB version of that, and I don't know if you're familiar with the EPUB format, but that's not a good format to read the Nintendo Power magazine in because it's so very image focused.
Exactly.
It looks
It's
fine here.
well, the EPUB format in particular, it's a format designed for reading on small devices, like and meant to scale based on the size of your screen. The idea being is that an EPUB will work on a tab, the text will reparse itself for whether you're reading on a tablet or on like a phone or a small ebook reader. And with an EPUB version for a Nintendo Power Magazine, it doesn't work because it uses the full 2 pages in combination so often for level maps, for example, particularly when you're dealing with games with big sprawling levels like Super Mario Bros. 2, Legend of Zelda, Metroid, that sort of thing. Or even for that matter, like Metal Storm. So that's kind of
Yeah.
the big that's kind of the big issue there. And I see that if you try to read a issue Nintendo Power and EPUB, that's going to be mangled to hell and back, and not be particularly real. Also, EPUB's black and white.
Yeah, it makes
Yeah.
no sense. By the way, it is searchable and selectable.
Okay, so that's probably the main advantage I'd see for having the PDF version, and probably what's compressed is there's probably some compression as part of the optical character recognition process.
I
Is
guess, but you wanna these magazines you just wanna flip it, you know. You don't
yeah,
wanna go and search for whatever you're looking for.
I understand. On the other hand, if you're looking for the Zelda wrap and you want to copy paste the Zelda wrap into an article you're working on or whatever, that might be worth something because that the Zelda wrap appears in one of the letters columns for Nintendo Power.
Well, I'm downloading everything right now
All of it.
before
All
he
of it.
goes out of it. I
Yeah,
mean, is it
that,
really that? I mean, I guess that yeah, they need probably Nintendo's uh, not permission, but you know, okay to do it because again, they are not Nintendo's not making any money out of this, nor are these guys. Um, they're not selling this anymore. I guess Nintendo could eventually try to sell us this, right? If they have the actual, the raw images and the raw information.
They can just confiscate it from these guys and be good to go.
I
No,
mean,
because it's not gonna be raw, right? I mean, these
yeah,
are scans. This is not the raw image from
yeah.
the direct.
There's still gonna be some
Hmm.
compression in some form or another, and particularly I could see the things which I could see this affecting sales of to a certain degree. Is not so much the whole magazine as a whole in general. It's collections of the comic strips, be it a complete Howard and Nestor and Nestor's Adventures, a complete collection of the Super Mario Adventures comic, which is what I'm reading right now. Where I'm at in the magazine is currently on.
But is Nintendo making any money out of that though?
I believe they're getting some royalties from, like, for example, Viz and the Legend of Zelda: Link to the Past compilation that they've put out right now.
Hmm.
So theoretically, there's an issue there, but then again, on the other hand, if you buy the collection, you have all of the complete story together in one place. With
But that would be the only thing though, right?
yeah, and that in its own way puts an advantage over buying the collection over the magazine, and so makes the magazine not necessarily as appealing if you're just trying to get it for reading the storyline. So I don't know how Nintendo's going to take this. Hopefully the response will be something along the lines of either benign neglect or an outright endorsement. I'd prefer an outright endorsement over benign neglect, because benign neglect can eventually turn into no, take this down, whereas an endorsement and approval is harder to do takebacks on.
Mm-hmm. So, Mr. Ian, what are your thoughts on this so far? Like, are you for it? Are you against it? Do you not care?
It's one of those things where Nintendo Power pretty much officially closed up shop in 2012. Even the Nintendo Power website's down. It says come back later. So it's one of those things where Nintendo's not doing anything with it, so it's this weird, fun gray area. But the thing is, Nintendo always wants their money. So if this starts making money as opposed to just a drain on their server resources and costing the website money, I'd be surprised. Because if they put ad revenue on it and make any type of a profit, I'm sure Nintendo will be down their throats almost instantly.
Oh yeah,
So-
but that's what I'm saying. But these guys they've never, from my understanding, they've never done that.
Yeah, archive.org is a incorporated non-profit.
Yes.
Yeah, so they're probably fine. Nintendo may or may not come after them because it's abandoned at this point, and Nintendo's not doing anything with it. And ultimately, pretty much physical media for gaming magazines is a pretty limited niche at this point. So I can't imagine Nintendo's going to do much with this unless something happens where it's profitable.
I can see Nintendo sell. If the rumors are true about the NX, I can see them selling again raw prints of this for you to
I could
read on the
definitely-
go.
I could definitely see him selling like posters of cover art and stuff like that, considering that Nintendo Power issue #1 has the iconic claymation image that some people might want in poster form. But
I definitely agree.
Yeah.
I'd love there are several Nintendo Power covers or even internal art that I'd love to see that I'd love to get posters of. Issue 1, the infamous, I think it's issue #2, where it's the Castlevania 2 cover
Yes.
with Simon Beaumont holding the severed head of Dracula, which led to letter writing campaigns from parents who were concerned that their children would be traumatized.
Oh yeah.
Well, were they traumatized?
I was.
Do they even have Nintendo
I'm
Power
still
in the
traumatized
country?
for that. I'm still traumatized. I don't know what you guys are talking
what I find really neat is that Nintendo Power, when it started in 1988, was the fastest magazine to 1 million subscribers ever.
Well, part of what helped is with Nintendo Power. It started out as the Fun Club News. I covered on my show.
Yeah.
And then when they switched over to Nintendo Power, everyone who had a Fun Club News subscription immediately carried over to Nintendo Power subscription for at least a year.
So let them cheat on getting the subscriber count way the hell up there.
And they did enough really solid content in that first year where it made people want to re-up their subscription.
Mhm.
It helped with the second and third year where they started transitioning towards being an annual magazine, but a full monthly as opposed to a bi-monthly.
What I find really intriguing, did you know this, was that because of Nintendo Power, it actually helped Sega cement their lead in the 16-bit wars.
What do you mean?
Well, here's the thing. So what ended up happening was Sega never had an official magazine. So Sega began this relationship with a lot of the gaming magazines that were out there. And because Nintendo had Nintendo Power, Nintendo had this tendency to save all their juiciest and best information for Nintendo Power, so they wouldn't share it with the outside publishers. So Sega, capitalizing on this lack of communication and friendship between Nintendo and the magazine publishers, Sega moved in on it and made sure to share as much information as they could with the gaming mags that existed at the time. So as a result, it really helped them just kind of push forward with these relationships, and they got more favorable reviews from the magazines because the magazines ended up hating Nintendo because of their exclusionary tendencies towards Nintendo Power. So it's kind of a fun thing that Nintendo Power ended up kind of being, even though it was a very profitable enterprise initially back in the mid-90s for them because they had so many subscribers, but eventually kind of began to chip away at their relationship with the media as a whole.
Hmm.
Yeah, and additionally, to a certain degree, some of Nintendo's behavior towards other developers and licensors for the system, that when it came to what titles came to the U.S., ended up annoying the publishers of magazines as well. Not so much like GamePro, which is more their first issue, their statement of principles was we're an entertainment magazine, not an informational magazine or a criticism magazine. or news. Whereas EGM, you had EGM and Die Hard Game Fan, all these other ones who were honestly wanting to get involved to do game criticism and game reporting, talking about, hey, there's this really great version of Batman that Sunsoft made for the Genesis in Japan, and we're not getting it because of Nintendo's licensing restrictions. And then when there was the court ruling for the anti-competitive case, antitrust case against Nintendo, where the judge's ruling was, okay, every Nintendo customer anyone who's bought a Nintendo product within the past few years, whatever part of this class, gets a $5 gift certificate on any Nintendo product or game cartridge. There was the magazines like EGM who were crying foul and saying, hey, that's just only really putting money in Nintendo's pocket because $5 doesn't get you jack.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, Nintendo kind of actually cleverly put that out there as a coupon people could use. So it made it look like they're giving people free money.
Yeah.
So it worked really well on their behalf.
Nintendo was really smart about that.
And Nintendo they were very draconian. Well, they were just straight up draconian in the way they ran the market, because when they entered it in the mid '80s, there was no one else who could even challenge them. So they set up these like incredibly hardcore licensing agreements where companies could only make 5 games a year for them, and they had to meet Nintendo's scrutiny. And not to mention they had to buy their cartridges directly from Nintendo at $10 a cartridge, which basically meant no matter what, Nintendo would have a profit cut of their game, as well as Nintendo had a rule, basically an internal policy that they would always under-deliver on orders, so no company would ever get their full order of cartridges. So they were just perpetually screwing over game developers because they just were the only game in town for a while.
And for the first part of that, for the limiting number of games and that sort of thing, I could see developers going with that portion because a lot of people saw what happened in the crash and how that happened, and nobody wants the crash of '82 to be followed by the crash of '87.
But in a way, it was Nintendo controlling the market because Nintendo directly wanted to control that type of market outcome. But
yeah, absolutely. And I'm getting into some of this in the show. If it weren't for the fact that I've already got so much stuff on my plate as it is, back in the day when I was doing all this stuff as prose articles, in addition to doing Nintendo Power retrospectives, when EGM first went shut down for a period, I had an EGM retrospectives, and I've still considered off and on like bringing back like the Game Pro retrospectives, which was the other thing I did. I just need a sufficient enough archive with no gaps of Game Pro, or limited gaps, so we could sort of chart the history of how Game Pro developed as a magazine, and when it actually decided, okay, now we're going to be somewhat journalistic-y by giving scores on games, even though all of them are 4s and 5s.
I don't know. The funny thing for me was I was traveling recently, and I bought a PC Gamer for the first time in a number of years. And I was just reading the articles. I'm like, these are garbage. I'm just like, what? Like, I remember when I was younger, like reading the articles and being enthralled with every word they said, and now it's just kind of this very, almost like, I'm like, man, like the people on YouTube do a better job reviewing these games than these magazines are doing now.
Oh,
So that's kind of the sad part.
Part of the problem is the internet column inches are less of a thing. I mean, on YouTube we do have a certain degree of. I love my viewers, but they do have a certain degree of attention span. If I went for a full hour on an issue of Nintendo Power and go super in depth in every game, I probably wouldn't actually get as many viewers as I do with a half-hour show, just because people have to manage their time. But for a print magazine, column inches are money in terms of just the actual cost of printing the magazine.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And
but
so
it was just funny. I'm sorry to interrupt you. It was just funny because in the magazine I was reading like, it literally were giving people like 400 words, and they were just talking about what they did in Grand Theft Auto 5 for the day, and I'm like, really? This is what PC Gamer is wasting their space on?
Well, PC Gamers always kind of had issues. I remember a couple things, like issues, like I tuned out of PC Gamer for a while and came back. One of them was back in the day, they did a review of the PC port of Silent Hill 2, which is regarded as, Silent Hill 2, one of the best horror games of all times. And whenever the games is as art debate comes up, Silent Hill 2 is one of the games that is held up as an exemplar of games as an art form. And the review by PC Gamer was basically the shooting is terrible, the controls are terrible, console games suck, so therefore Silent Hill 2 sucks. They didn't talk anything about the story, the imagery, whether it was actually effective as a horror game, whether the mechanics played into it being an effective horror game. They treated it like it should have been a shooter and panned it because of that. And focusing more on the fact that this was a port of a console game, and therefore it's inferior because it came from console, as opposed to being native to PC.
So they're like a bunch of haters.
Yeah, it's PC Gamer has always been, like, for example, as one of the big, back when PC versus console holy wars are still a thing. There's still the people raising the banner of PC Master Race and that sort of thing.
That's offensive.
But they've always kind of been pushing that thing. I remember back when the PlayStation 3 launch happened. I was listening to the PC Gamer podcast for a little bit at the time, and one of the things they did for a PR stunt is they went to a GameStop that was having a launch for the PlayStation 3, and they had this big high-end PC that they built, and they were going to give it to anyone there in line who would agree to sign a legally binding document forbidding them from ever owning a PlayStation 3 at any point in the future. I believe they provisioning its PlayStation 3 and the Xbox 360. They're like, you can't buy any of this generation consoles. We'll give this to you if you legally agree to never own any of those systems.
I'll say screw you.
Yeah.
I totally would have done it.
I would have done it. Because, look, was it back when the PS3 and when the 360 launched? I was not a PC dude, like, at all. I didn't like... I call the PC games like the clicking games.
The clicking games.
Yeah, the clicking games.
Of course you would.
I grew up seeing my brothers playing Command and Conquer Red Alert, and I hated that game. I call it the clicking game.
I say different strokes for different folks.
Yes.
I like them all. No?
No.
Just true. You know, PC, it's better.
I still pull.
It's just stone cold Fox, bitch.
You know who's Stone Cold Fox? Star Fox.
Yeah. Cat from Star Fox. She was hot.
But,
tell you.
And
Sorry
speaking
to tell
of,
you.
quick thoughts on the Nintendo Power magazine. I had absolutely no interest ever getting a Nintendo Power magazine until now, this past 30 minutes. Because I'm looking at some of these covers, I'm seeing a lot of good, badass covers.
You should have been watching my show, man.
I saw I saw a couple of the episodes.
I spent a lot of time talking about the art and the layout and how things are presented and that sort of thing. Like, someone what's nuts is like the celebrity profiles of the celebrities they get. Like, sometimes you get like, oh, J random
Kirk Cameron.
Yeah, you get Kirk Cameron, you get you get like what's her face from Clarissa Explains It All. On the one
Melissa
hand,
Joan Hart.
Yeah, we get Melissa Joan Hart on the one hand. On the other hand, oh hey, there's an interview with Robin Williams.
Let's be
Well, to be fair, he loved the hell out of Zelda.
Oh, absolutely, but like they had the interview with Robin Williams. They had an interview with Will Wheaton. They had an interview with people who are and were considered not just celebrities, but recognized among geeks like us for their geekery. And I thought that was kind of particularly cool. Is coming across them on there, like it's great. We kind of glancing at the profile and telling, okay, which are the guys who they're talking about video games because Nintendo handed them a Game Boy for a week and a few games and said do whatever, or put a Nintendo in a just offsetter in somebody's an NES just offsetter in somebody's trailer and said, hey, here's something to do during your downtime during shooting. And which are the ones where it's like, yeah, you don't need to give me an NES, you don't need to give me a Super Nintendo or a Game Boy. I already own one. I play games all the time, like Will, like Will Wheaton, like Robin Williams, that sort of thing. And the interesting seeing the difference between the two.
Oh yeah, and speaking of Will Wheaton, I kind of want to do I guess an honorable mentions. There's a lot of shows or a lot of cool things that I come across. I don't want to talk fully on, but I think it's worth checking out. One is I just want someone to talk about the show with. So if anyone's ever seen Powers, please let me know. I like to say that I love to hate this show or I hate to love this show. But the reason I say this is because Will Wheaton actually stars in season 2 of Powers, and it's I guess my love of Heroes has transferred over to this one, but I watch it. I have not come across anybody else that watch it, but I also hate the show at the same time. So I don't know. That's a love-hate relationship. But the one show I did really want to mention was Stranger Things on Netflix. God,
I've been meaning to watch both
show.
those. Powers. Yeah, I mean to watch Powers because I enjoy reading Brian Michael Bendis' comics, and he's the one who wrote the comic series the TV show is based on.
Mm-hmm.
I enjoyed his run in Daredevil and his Avengers run, and I'm interested in watching the show. Stranger Things, I have a big long list of the Netflix originals that I've been meaning to get caught up on. I'm still behind on Daredevil. I am still behind on Jessica Jones. I'm still behind on Knights of Sidonia.
Are you serious?
I'm serious.
Are you serious? Because I'm usually the one who's behind on things, and I've already seen all of them shows.
Well, part of the problem is, for a certain degree, is with the Netflix thing, as opposed because it puts everything on all at once, as opposed to like Game of Thrones where it comes out every week, is I have the recurring reminder of my friends of, oh, hey, have you watched a new episode of Game of Thrones or what have you? Like, oh, right, should be getting caught up on this thing. Or have you watched? Whereas with Netflix, with dropping everything all at once, it's like, okay, I can get to that whenever, so
Yeah.
I can put that off, and I want to watch I want to watch Solaris this week. Or
Game of Thrones is better anyway. So.
well, hypothetical example for the TV show structure. Could have been the X-Files revival, the X-Files little miniseries thing, but still or Wallander on PBS. But it's the same sort of thing here. Where if by dropping everything out, by dumping it all at once, okay, I can watch this whenever. I'm going to watch Solaris on Hulu because they've got the Criterion Collection stuff right now, and Solaris is on my to-watch list. Or Cronenberg's The Brood, or Scanners, or whatever. Get a few of the little Criterion Collection stuff off my to-watch list. Or I'll do that sort of thing, and then eventually go, oh, right, I'm going to sit down and watch a bunch of Daredevil, and then and I won't get through all of it, and then stuff will come up, and it's a vicious cycle.
Right. Life happens. But yeah, basically, if you guys like 80s type of shows with 80s synth-style music, a little bit of conspiracy theory, a little bit of paranormal, great acting, and really well-rounded characters, or just really good, flawed characters, it's worth checking out. But I just wanted to say that I watched it. I watched it in 3 days. I think there's 8 episodes. I'm pretty sure there's 8 episodes. Don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure I've watched them all, and it was really enjoyable. I liked it a lot. It was very refreshing. Usually I just watch comic book hero shows, and that's about it. Maybe some anime. But yeah, so I've got to get to the main topic here, which is, the question is eSports, or are video games a form of sports?
No. It's absolutely not.
So you've got to elaborate this to me, because we've talked about this multiple times. We've never had a chance to really get into this. So why don't you think that video games are a sport?
Because I grew up playing sports. Of course, I don't do it as much now. But when I think of sports, I'm thinking football, baseball, basketball, something that has to do with some of the physical activity. To me, I consider video games no more of a sport than, I don't know, I guess chess, poker. I don't really consider those sports, more like a strategy. It has to be something physical.
What's the definition of a sport? That's the
Something-
first thing you need to
I
ask.
believe it's a physical activity.
Oh, let's look
A
this up.
definition of a sport is, I already have it pulled up, so I was ready. I had this a while
Oh,
ago.
there you go.
So-
So you know where I'm going, right?
Oh yeah, definitely. I'm sure. But just to state it, it's an activity involving physical exertion, which, again, a controller is physical exertion of some sort,
Consider it
and
physical
skill in which an individual or team competes against another or others for entertainment. And Antonio, if you want to go ahead and add to that, I'll let you have that.
No, that's then esports is a sport.
It's not a sport.
Stone cold facts.
I call it professional gaming.
Oh man.
I mean, on the one hand, I see where you're coming from. Where it's it's not as physically exertive as someone who hasn't been involved in sports and stuff in the past. It's not as physically exerting as an actual physical sport is. But on the other hand, I do.
Yeah, have you? I mean, I used to play baseball a lot while I was growing up. Let me tell you, that's not a very demanding sport either.
You have to
physically,
run.
it's not. No,
You
it's
have to
not.
run. It counts. You're running.
You run for like 2
you have
seconds.
like 10 seconds of exertion
Yes,
every half
it's
hour.
not. It's really not. And you're, sometimes if you don't get to hit the ball, you don't even run.
You get to swing and you throw.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well,
It's physical.
let me tell you this. As someone that has competed in the Grandmaster level for StarCraft, let me tell you something. If you're talking about physical exhaustion, that game will physically and mentally exhaust you.
Here's
Really.
a question: are you losing weight playing that game?
You probably are. Yes, you probably are.
Okay, I want you to go on like a StarCraft binge.
No, I'm not. I'm
Yeah,
done with StarCraft.
I want you to weight yourself now.
Tyler,
And go on
have you ever
StarCraft
seen what a
binge.
real freaking StarCraft player looks like? The professional ones? They're like the skinniest people alive.
Yeah, like if you watch Korean StarCraft, like high-level StarCraft.
Those are
play-
Koreans. They aren't people.
So even the Caucasian
Wow,
players are skinny as hell, man.
Holy
Koreans,
shit.
they're not people. Did you say that?
He doesn't in no way represents the TCX.
Like the
No, because they'll probably do a bunch of physical activities though.
So, okay, look, I want to run this by you.
Actually, I will say there, from what I've heard from people who do pro gaming, particularly RTS gaming, there are physical warm-up exercises you have to do before and after each match.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
And there, as with any sport, there is significant risk of injury.
Yes. There is.
And having known people who've had surgery for carpal tunnel syndrome, it's not something I'd wish on my. I can say I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy, but I wouldn't wish it on my. But on lower tier enemies than that, I wouldn't wish it on them.
Lower tier. I love it.
Yeah, and to add on to that, there are very few sports outside of chess and martial arts where you go through a gauntlet of match after match after match.
Well, of course, martial arts, that's physical activity.
Right, but what I'm saying though is martial arts is the only other like bracket form where you compete multiple times in one day. In UFC and boxing and football and almost any
that
sport that
happens
has a ball
in
in it.
tennis as well. Tennis.
Right. Yeah, it's very few, but doing it back to back to back like that in one day is very mentally and physically exhausting.
It is.
It's ridiculous, and I've done it. I've only played like 4 or 5 matches, so I can't imagine the people at Evo, where that was actually aired on ESPN. I don't know if you had to have known that because we talked about it, but
I don't think I was there when we talked about it. Was I?
yeah, no, because that's where this debate sparked off.
Okay, but yeah.
Yeah, and also, I know the person that has talked to. I just, about an hour ago, got done talking to Hollywood Sleep, F3 Hollywood Sleep, who is the Evo 2016 winner for Killer Instinct. And I'm sure he would definitely disagree, but...
Well, I competed in Mortal Kombat 2, not the newer one, and I don't think it's exhausting at all. I think it's very, very fun.
Maybe you have very strong mental.
But there's also tiers again difference because and I'm biased, but I still think like for strategy games, RTS, I think it's a little bit more exhausting because the matches can last way longer, and the amount of movement and different strokes that you need to do with the mouse and the keyboard compared to any other game is way higher than any other game. And again, I think for that particular game, if you've never, honestly, if you've never done it like that, I tell you for experience, it's really, really exhausting to play on a tournament like that. It is really exhausting, and I don't. I mean, you end up sweating at the end of those matches.
I still say I want you to weigh yourself now and do this a marathon of StarCraft.
I don't
Let's
want
see
to
if you
do
lose
that. I don't
any
want to do
weight.
that anymore. That's the problem. It was so exhausting that I honestly couldn't do it anymore. Of how exhausting it was.
I mean, and I completely get that. I mean, and as far as for being fun, being whether or not it counts as a sport, I mean, the reason people do sports for competition, they don't do sports for competition because they hate it. They don't. People don't swim competitively because they hate the water and hate swimming. They enjoy it. It's very much a part of who they are.
Oh, not all of them.
However, it also is something which can actually which is physically taxing and can cause some very real injuries. I have a friend of mine from high school who used to swim competitively, and he can't anymore. He has muscle tears that happened while swimming, and that's something when I think of swimming, that's not the kind of injury I think of, or somebody tore a muscle while swimming competitively.
But at least he can say, hey, I competed, this happened to me. Can you imagine someone's like, yeah, I got carpal tunnel because I played, I don't know, Overwatch too much.
Well, that happens.
It happens. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I could see someone saying that, and if they said that, I would have legitimate legitimate sympathy, not tiny violin fake sympathy. I'd have legitimate sympathy for them because carpal tunnel hurts.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
My coworker has that, and she plays like competitive WoW. So she's a little older, so she's put in her hours for sure.
I'm still saying she might as well get up, stay away from WoW, and get some exercise before doing anything else.
So I've got to ask. I mean, well, one, I'm pretty active, but where does this stem from that you think that you have to lose weight in order to play a sport?
Not that. I just was thinking, sports should be a physical activity if you consider a sport. I never once could consider a video game a sport. I didn't think I heard the word e-sport, which I thought was cringy.
Or is it not a physical activity?
Huh?
Is it or is it not a physical activity?
It depends what you're doing. If you're playing Dance Dance Revolution, then yes, I consider that an e-sport.
If you're playing whatever other, if you're playing Mortal Kombat, is that a physical activity or no?
Not really. I don't consider that as one.
But why?
I mean, sure, I'm standing up and playing against people, but no.
Why is that exactly?
I don't know. I consider it more as something that amuses me.
Is chess considered a sport?
Chess.
I never considered chess a sport. I never did.
I don't know if you personally do, but is it considered a sport?
Chess has been aired on ESPN2, and I do believe the ESPN broadcast team, when they did the series of matches of Kasparov versus Deep Blue, I believe they used the ESPN had a chess broadcast team for those matches, though those were not aired on ESPN, those were aired on ABC. So ESPN has a chess coverage team. ESPN2 broadcasts spelling bees. ESPN2 back in the day broadcast Magic the Gathering. I kind of wish they still did because they had a much better presentation for I mentioned this during the Evo coverage. ESPN had a much better presentation for their Magic the Gathering broadcast than what we're getting now for the streams in terms of level of coverage and level of explanation of what the hell is going on. And I felt ESPN used to broadcast poker. They still do on the ESPN3 web app stuff. They still do broadcast World Poker Tour. So, and While
It's,
poker is not a physically strenuous activity, in fact, there are many frequently poker players who are high-level players who are, let's just say, not exactly svelte, are certainly people consider that a sporting activity. Not so much because of the physical side of the activity, but because of the mental side of the activity, whether related to actively figuring out of playing the statistics in your mind of what cards are the table based on what cards are in your hand, but also in terms of playing your opponent.
The psychological aspect of it.
Well, it's the chess. It's been recognized in the Olympics as a sport.
Yeah.
Yep.
24 out of the 28 members of the states of the European Union consider that as a sport, and we know the Europeans are better people than us. So, you're just gonna go ahead and take their answer for it. Yeah. It seems that if chess is a sport, video games can be a sport.
Yeah, but I don't consider chess a sport, so.
But it is.
Well, here's another thing that I'm probably not going to convince Tyler, but I do want to mention, is that Josh Whiteskin, he has a great book called The Art of Learning. I definitely recommend you check it out. But this person was the person that the movie Searching for Robbie Fisher was based off of.
Bobby Fischer.
Bobby Fischer, thank you, not Robbie Fisher. But this guy was one of the best or most popular chess. I don't want to say the best, but he's one of the most popular chess players to ever be because of that movie, and the book that his father wrote about him and everything. And this person, he too considers chess to be a sport, and I do want to mention that this person made the transition from doing chess, and he transitioned over to martial arts, specifically Tai Chi Chuan push hands, and became a master of that as well, with almost the same philosophy of learning chess. And you can go through his journey of learning all of this stuff in the book, which is really good. But I take the way I make my choices is by the people who are at the top of their game. This person is, a grandmaster of chess, and I believe a grandmaster or some sort of master in martial arts now. He's really good at that. Really cool, very humble person. But this person at the top of his game in two different forms of sports considers both of them to be equal sports in their own way. They're both very mentally draining activities that you have to do over a period of time. And while maybe the mainstream or the general public might not think that video games and things like chess and poker aren't sports, but they don't understand the intricacies of what's going on in the player's mind. All the action is happening in a place where they can't see, and so of course we're going to think, oh, that's not a sport. They're not really exerting any physical force or doing any work. But up here, there's a lot of things they have to consider, whether it be chess. I'm going to do fighting games because that's what I'm most familiar with right now, but you have to consider all the inputs. Execution is very important. You have to go and train for hours and hours doing these moves over and over again to become muscle memory. You have to anticipate.
Yeah, so like the muscle memory is a big thing. Like there's the classic bit from Daigo versus I forget who his opponent
Justin
was.
Long.
The Chun-Li parry.
Yeah.
I assume we've all seen this.
Yes.
Oh man.
So the thing about the Chun-Li parry and this whole situation is a lot of that. Once the actual parry starts for each of the hits of Chun-Li of Chun-Li's attack, it's all muscle memory. For that, it's having the muscle memory to pull off all those blocks, and once you to pull off all those parries, and once you pull off all those parries, and then the brain part is getting yourself in a situation where you can know, okay, I'm not going to block this. I'm going to do the parry here so I can do the chip damage and all this stuff to finish off.
Yeah, he puts himself in an advantage. But yeah, and you bring a good point, and I didn't really think about it, but muscle memory, that in itself implies that you're doing something with your muscles. You have to teach your body all these new inputs, and I have articles that I'm writing about all this stuff because fighting games in particular. In StarCraft, you hotkey the shit out of everything. I can't do that, so I respect the people that can play StarCraft because you're doing a bunch of wizardry with these fingers. I don't get it. But fighting games, you have to memorize all these weird inputs that correlate with an animation that's going on screen that affects.
Wow, downfall, low punch, back, A.
Well, some of those
low punch. So hard to memorize.
Well,
I'm gonna give you a combo to perform, and I want you to do it top notch.
And the thing is, some of those maneuvers are actually still difficult to pull off. I cannot consistently do a dragon punch motion. This is why I main Ryu, not Ken, because I can't do the dragon punch. That's also why anti-air is my big weakness.
I can teach you the way. I can show you the world.
Well, it's figuring out stuff. It's also like I don't do Zangief for big grappler guys because it's all 360s and 180s, and I can't consistently get those pulled off properly.
Can I just say, though, that Tavian just right now sounded a little bit rapey?
Here's a question.
I can teach
There's only
you the
one
way.
There's a couple ways I think I might ever consider video game a sport. One, physical activity, Dance Revolution, maybe playing the drums on Rock Band, playing World Track Meet on Nintendo, or you are getting up the couch and going out and go video game hunting.
What about Pokemon hunting? So do you consider Pokemon Go?
I can see that as being a sport. Yeah, do that. Pokemon Go. I approve.
Perhaps
we were waiting for your approval.
Perhaps the final word I may have, though it's probably not really my final word as far as for why I consider video games a sport, is because Colin Cowherd doesn't consider them to be a sport, and I had to put up with that piece of garbage when he was on local sports news coverage before he got fired for being a jerk and went on to ESPN and then got fired again over his objections to eSports coverage. And so, Colin, if you're watching, I know you're not, but if you're watching, I've heard about this great burger place in Seattle called Dick's Burgers. I want to get you a big bag of burgers. I think you'll find them delicious. Just get you a big old bag of Dicks, and you can just eat them right up. Eat up that bag of Dicks.
It's hot dog. Hot dog eating contest might be considered a sport.
Hot dog eating contest is considered a sport.
But you're getting heavier. What goes against your whole belief?
Well, sumo wrestlers are getting heavier, and they wrestle.
Well,
you can't just throw in a curveball variable like this.
And also sumo, a lot of that is straight up muscle because the whole point of sumo is you don't move, you make them move.
I heard they have to eat before the match.
There is a very specific diet that they have to eat. And I believe there are restrictions regulations on if you can eat before the match and how much you can eat.
Yeah, and they probably have more stamina than you have.
And also, sumo, as with all other combat sports, has weight classes.
Mm-hmm.
So they do weigh-ins and everything else before matches. So this isn't just there's that side of things as well.
Mm-hmm. And so.
I've always been of the opinion that if it's something people do and it makes money and it's competitive, it's a sport.
So you say all athletes are doing this for money then?
Yep.
What?
Are you saying all athletes are doing this for the money?
No, that's not what he's saying at all.
I think a lot of them are doing it for the money. I think a lot of them are.
All of them.
I know, so they're not true athletes. I do it for the fun.
If you're gonna play that really dumb game where it's like the one where Olympians were only considered the truest athletes because they didn't do it for money. Come on, that's the dumbest form of just people being altruistic about sports. It's just retarded.
For that matter, the crap that the NCAA athletes run into where they are only doing it for the purity of the sport. While the NCAA makes billions, I'm not exaggerating, billions of dollars after their names and likenesses, and they don't see a dime from the damn thing.
It's literally akin to modern day slavery. And in fact, they're getting free education out of it. It's kind of ridiculous.
They're getting education out of this, but it's
exactly
but they have a whole bunch of restrictions. But they have a whole bunch of restrictions on top of that they face on top of this, and additionally, in some cases, the academic institution and the NCAA is making money off these people's likenesses even after they've left that institution. There's a reason why, like this year, we're not getting any NCAA games because there was a lawsuit, basically from a class action lawsuit of students in various academic, collegiate sports teams over how their likenesses were being used and capitalized on without them getting any recompense from it. And basically, EA and a bunch of other companies who had gotten the rights for the NCAA rights for these various sports basically went, yeah, we're just backing off on this.
So yeah, I don't know. It sounds like I'm not going to be able to convince Tyler of his craziness tonight.
Nope, you have to be getting off your butt and go out exercise. Everyone go out and play Pokemon Go right now.
Don't drive and don't trespass.
That doesn't. If you're driving, you're cheating, and it's not considered a sport anymore. Well,
I love you, Tyler.
So Tyler, you don't consider Formula One racing a sport?
Formula One racing. If you're drinking formula, I don't care.
No, it refers to the level of fuel in the car, the grade of fuel in the car. It's like aviation fuel plus.
Constantly looking at how much gas you have. I don't really consider that a sport. No.
What about NASCAR?
NASCAR? Oh, sure. Let's watch them turning left.
Is it a sport? Is it a sport or not?
There's a sport. No, that's an e-sport right there. It's electronic.
Where does this logic come from, Tyler? We're even.
How about golf? What do you think about golf, Tyler?
Yeah, you're swinging.
You like
you're
swingers?
Swinging, you're walking. You're swinging and you're walking. Physical activity.
But you walk off the stage when you're playing fighting games.
Yeah, but after what, 30 or so minutes? Nah.
If you're playing Street Fighter, it's like maybe 2 minutes or so.
2 minutes? Nah, not a sport. You're staying still for too long.
I hate you, Tyler. But I love you. I love that I hate you, and I hate that I love you, Tyler. What do you do to me?
You're tearing me apart, Tyler.
You're tearing this family apart. But I digress. We are all out of time. I will just go down the line and let these folks know where they can be found, starting with Mr. Alexander.
All right, youtube.com/user/count0OR, all one word. I shall put the link shall go in the chat. Latest episode of my Breaking It All Down reviews is up. I've taken a look at the audiobook version of The Legend of Drizzt, The Complete Stories by R.A. Salvatore, which features readings by some of the people we've even discussed previously in the Nintendo Power portion, such as one Will Wheaton, reading the people reading various Drizzt Do'Urden short stories. I go through the collection and talk about what stories work, what stories don't, and why, whether it's based on the content of the story themselves or because of the reading, because that's one of the fun things with audiobooks. And also, on my channel, I have the Nintendo Power retrospectives, where I go through every issue of Nintendo Power, and have been one issue at a time and covering all the featured games and discussing the magazine and how the games are covered in them and how the games themselves stand up. I definitely recommend checking out that show in particular if you enjoyed the Nintendo Power discussion, and maybe even reading the issues of Nintendo Power along with the show. I'm certainly planning on putting links to the issues of Nintendo Power on future episodes of the show, so you can read along as well.
All right, and Mr. Antonio.
By the way, I'm getting tired of clicking download on these freaking Nintendo Power magazines. On the archives, oh my god, takes forever, but I love it. Sure, they can find me on YouTube. You can just search for Gokado Retro Reviews. Gokado is in Gokado, at Gokadito, Gokadito in Twitter. Facebook, I have a Gokado Retro Reviews Facebook page as well. and of course in the console explosion.
A baboom. Ian, where can they find you, sir?
Yeah, you can find me at my website, www.historicnerd.com, or on YouTube, Historic Nerd, one word, or two, you like it, somebody else. But yeah, or if you want to bug me directly, you can talk to me at historicalnerd on twitter.com, or you can find me on the consoleexplosion.com.
All right, and Tyler.
Well, you can find me on YouTube, Hot Anime 32, or Video Game Hunter 32. They'll both take you to the same
Is that
channel.
a sport? Is that a sport?
Hot Anime 32, that's a sport.
Yeah, lots of joking off to Bible Black.
Oh. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Most dangerous of game.
Other than that, I also have a Twitter, VGH32, and also I'm on this furry social network for Zoo. Just type in Video Game Hunter, and you can find my furry OC there. And you can chat me through there. And I'm also streaming for the TCX every Monday on the Twitch channel, and you can watch me stream every Friday on my YouTube channel called Furry Friday.
All right, thank you. And as always, I'm your host, The Philosopher. You can find me on Facebook.com/Philosopher, YouTube/The Philosopher, Twitter @The Philosopher, and of course, always on the ConsoleExplosion.com. And if you guys didn't know, we are going to start doing some giveaways. I have a friend who makes perlers, so we're doing some perler giveaways, just like the one we did for last week. And we will give you guys, you have a chance to enter to win one of the perler bees. All you have to do is be subscribed to our channel, like the video, and leave a comment. And on that note, do you guys think that esports are a sport? I passed that question on to you. Obviously, we didn't resolve it here.
It's in the freaking name.
I agree.
It doesn't count, though.
But, yes, let us know what you guys think. But as always, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.
Can I win one?
Stone Cold Facts, bitch!